Hey everyone, it's me Nate, back with another DCS MIG21 video. I do have a bit of a cold, so if I am snorting my nose, then I do apologize. I'm not doing copious amounts of cocaine in the background. Disclaimer. So, actually, I realize that now we've done a lot of these videos for people to use as a guide. We actually really haven't touched upon in any real detail the specific instruments. So today we're on the ground during a ground-based lesson on the office, as I like to call it. We're going to go over what is not in very specific detail, but the things you should know and the things you need to know to make sure that you fly this thing to a good degree. I mean, obviously refer to the manual if you want to know something specific, but I'll give you the important bits, and I'll go over probably the majority of it, but just to let you know where things are and what you're seeing. So let's start with the stick. The stick is probably the easiest one. This button here puts you on the autopilot. This disengages the autopilot. Now, I don't really see these too much because I use I have a HOTAS stick, but this button here locks the target up for the radar. And this is your weapon release switch on the very far side. And this is the trim. And this here is the brake for nose wheel steering. Sorry, for differential braking, because the aircraft has differential brakes to steer rather than nose wheel steering. And that's actually and obviously you have the ejection handles, but that's the stick. Now, we're going to start over here because this is fairly straightforward. This is your electrical panel. This is where all the power for all the subsystems are. Your gyroscopic instruments, the D200 gyroscopic instruments, your pylons, your radio, your lights, all the power switches come from get activated. Don't come from it; they're activated here. And this is your engine sort of power startup panel here. So you got the battery heater and the battery, and you have all the DC and AC inverters and the fuel pumps here. This is all the engine stuff. Once you start up this part of the aircraft, you shouldn't have to touch once the aircraft is started. That is as it is. And over here you have an oil pressure gauge, which there's a warning light, a red warning light somewhere. I'm not sure where it is exactly. I think it's that one. I think. Don't quote me on this one. But that's your oil pressure light. Again, unless you've been shot at, this should be normal. Over here you have your IFF, your identification friend of foe switches. Again, have this on obviously when you're engaging in combat so you don't hit friend or foe, and obviously when people lock you up they can tell it's friend or foe. This is the radar control panel here. That's on off standby, and that's I think it's declutter and ground mode, because as you get closer to the ground, the radar starts bouncing off the ground, it's going to show signal disruption. So this is all the radar stuff here. Again, there is a radar session, I think, in one of my other videos, but that's where it is if you want to know what this is. This is the emergency gear handle release, which you pull if you have run out of hydraulics. But I'll go into that in a moment. Over here, then this is quite important. This is your angle of attack indicator for your plane. As you pull a G in turns, sorry, not G's, but as you pull in a turn, you increase your angle of attack the harder you pull. This is really important for dogfighting. You really don't want to be dogfighting so much in the MiG. It's not agile, but you need to keep an eye on this. The yellow zone, now, I haven't been able to get an exact source, but this is apparently sort of the optimal and maximum zone you should be in. You should be operating in this zone if you're dogfighting. The red zone you want to avoid, because then you're causing a lot of drag, and you're going to end up in a really bad energy situation. You want to be in the yellow zone at the maximum, the dogfight. That's probably your optimal performance zone, I would call it. I tend to stay below 20 because I really want to, and I go vertical because I like having excess speed and energy in a dogfight. But if you are really in a turn fight with probably another MiG21, you want to be in that zone. So you want to keep an eye out in there. I'm going to jump a few instruments to go over here quickly. These two red lights do several things, but one of them is related to the angle of attack. Once you start exceeding your optimum angle of attack, the computer calculates and gives you two red warning lights. That's the point where you should start let go of the stick a little bit, so you don't burn too much of your energy and cause too much drag. So you want to keep an eye on these two. The other thing these two lights do, of course, is the abort light for bombing. Not abort, but well, it is an abort light. If these come on during a bombing run, you should by then pull out no matter what you're doing, because the onboard computers worked out that is the lowest, safest level you can probably go before unable to pull out from a dive. So those two lights do that. Over here, I think this is accelerometer. a G meter, if I remember correctly. Never really used it. Not really on my important list, but that's where it is. Over here is your RWR lights. Now this is kind of helpful. Unlike the American RWRs, excuse me there, your situation awareness in this is really bad. Your RWR only tells you approximately where the enemy is coming from, so you see that the 4 amber, the 4 off lights, they turn amber when you're locked. So if the enemy is over that way, over the forest over there, this will light up. And if the enemy is ahead of you, I think both of them light up, just to let you know approximately where it's from. And it will beep. And the closer the beep, the closer the enemy is. So you're often left with a vague idea or a rough idea what the enemy is, but not a very clear sense of direction. And if you're locked up, like a hard lock, all 4 will light up, and you know you've been locked. And they'll give you an annoying sound, so you know you've been locked up. Over here is a distance indicator, what we would call a DME, not DME, sorry, but a DME display for distance, with the navigation, the onboard navigation equipment over here. So it gives you a distance to the navi that you've selected. This is all radar stuff for decluttering and IFF jamming. It clears around. This is all related to this little display here. So I'll go into that again at some detail at some point about the operated. What I plan to do is actually plan to break down these videos into little sub videos so you can kind of focus on one instrument over the other. So that's this half sort of done. Now over here you have your combat HUD system. These are a whole bunch of switches here that are related to the HUD. This is for the gun and bombard. So this puts you your start again. So that gives you a launch light, which you can launch. This gives you a rockets, gun, and gun or rocket and missile mode. So if you're on the gun mode, you want top. If you want rockets and missiles on the bottom. This SMB, B is bombardment mode, which is for ground attack. S is for air. For air-to-air stuff or rockets, but B is for bombs and stuff. And this is automatic or manual. Have it on automatic. You don't really want to do this on manual. Your workload, I guarantee you, is very high in the air, and especially in combat. So you really want this stuff to be on automatic. This is the dimmer light which is off right now for the HUD, for the fixed net. This switch here turns on the fixed net. If I move there, turns on the pipper. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. Turns on the pipper, which is the little dot, which is the target. Very cool. And this turns on the fixed net here. Let's show up. Come on, fixed net. Yes, fixed net. So that turns on the fixed net, which is off. And this is the target ranging for the wingspan, but I've never used this because I generally go back to sort of World War II, which is just keeping it simple and just lay guns on target and gauging it visually. Now this is. You will only use this if you're a hardcore simmer. This is your nose cone indicator. Now, the nose cone of this plane is actually variable. It will move back and forth. Sometimes the nose will be in, sometimes the nose will be out, depending on your speed, so that the air comes in at an acceptable speed, so the turbines don't have stall. But that is done manually. I would not touch this, turn it onto manual and use this, because this will be an incredible amount of work to actually fly using this manually. Over here, and this is the system we'll probably end up using the most, which I have, gives you the weapon selector switch. This is inconvenient. I'm not going to lie, 1960 Synology has not aged very well. You have to manually flip the switches to select the weapon you want in the specific hardpoint. So if you want the inner pylon 1 and 2, and you've got a weapon. So say I want to use these inner pylon stuff, then that's 1 and 2 on the inside, 3 or 4 on the outside. So if I want to use the bombs on the inside, I have to go bombs. And if I want rockets, I can use this one. Sorry, I have to use this one because I put my bombs on pylons 3 and 4 outside. And if I have rockets, S-24 rockets, I use these two here. And if I have long range or infrared missiles, I go here. Semi-active missile switch here, infrared missiles here. So when I dogfight, I have an infrared for the R60s, or you have neutral. The guns, that loads the guns. And if you jam it, you can load it again. It clears the jam. You can get 2 chances at clearing a jam. Obviously, on the third, you're done for. This puts the into air to ground mode for the weapons mode. Yeah, that's kind of self-explanatory. Over to the main sort of front panel here. This is an indicator, airspeed indicator in kilometers. The Russians are completely metric, so everything in this is metric. in kilometers. Over here, down below, is the altimeter. The inside is in kilometers, so it goes from 0 to 30 kilometers. On the outside is in tens of kilometers. So right now it's obviously 0 to 0, but if you were saying doing 30 kilometers and 10 meters, it will be, let's just say, example, you're 25 kilometers and 10 meters. It would be 25 on the inside and 10 on the outside. So you're doing 2,510 meters. Not ideal for, I use the internet. I'm used to using the ICAO standard of feet, but Russians have their own system, so that's what they do. Over here you have, I think they call it the NPP. You probably more familiar with the NHSI. That gives you the gyroscopic heading. Over here is the artificial horizon with a bank indicator, and this is what the LS is all done here as well. Over here is what I would call it a vertical speed indicator, but it's the Russians call it DA200 in this plane. Gives you your bank angle over here on the yellow things. Obviously right now it's neutral, and a turnbull in the middle, and it gives you a vertical your vertical speed in meters, so 20 meters per second or 100 meters per second. What else have we got covered here? The Mach meter, which there's two needles here actually. The thick one is the Mach meter. The bottom one is not a Mach meter. The bottom one is just an indicator, airspeed indicator. I think most planes these days have these two tied together, but I guess it's good to have a fail-safe system. Over here is just a clock. That's self-explanatory. And over here you have some of the engine instruments. So this is the engine power percentage. So it obviously goes from 0 to 100, and I think it goes beyond 100 a little bit for the afterburner. Engine exhaust gauge temperature. You want to measure your engine's exhaust gauge. If you're not doing long navs, you want to measure this, make sure your engine's in a good position. This is your fuel quantity in thousands of liters. I can't remember what the exact numbers were, but I think there's 1,500 liters you're supposed to turn around. That's bingo fuel. Obviously, you're supposed to plan it out, but 1,500 is where the time where you just go home. So that's that. But the specific fuel quantities are in the manual. This is the gear handle. Now, I should probably take this time now to mention how this works. The gear handle in the MiG-21 and the gear system is a constant hydraulic feed. So when it's not, the pumps will keep pumping, if that makes sense. When the gear needs to be neutral, because if the gear is up, you take off and you put the gear up and the gear goes up, it will keep pumping fuel, hydraulic fluid through the system non-stop. It will keep pumping it. So it will eventually, I think it's an open system, so it will overflow. And that's how you run out of hydraulics. So after you take off, you got to make sure this goes back into neutral position, which is why you have the gear handle here, actually. In one of my videos, I actually left this on and had to lower it manually the old-fashioned way by gravity. This is the flare switch. You need to unflick this to actually use the flares, even with the hotkeys, I believe. Actually, I think this has to be up to actually use it. And now this, I actually don't know if this is modeled, but this is the emergency afterburner. I think it's the engine. The engine in the MiG-21 BIS is basically a rocket engine. I mean, this thing will actually achieve a greater 1.1 to 1 ratio of lift. So this thing can go vertical. If you give it enough horizontal speed to the start, you can actually just climb up like a rocket. And that activates it, because I never read this in the book that the MiG-21 actually only has about 3 or 5 minutes that it's allowed to go into this emergency mode, because it just basically writes the engine off. Like the engine is told it needs to be rebuilt. So they have a switch for it there. I don't know if that's modeled. Someone can tell me in the comments if it is, but that's a switch for it there. That's the cockpit handles to open and close the cockpit and pressurize it. Now over here we have the throttle, and there's a couple of powers: military power, landing, minimum, afterburn. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Over here in this panel is the navigation equipment panel. Obviously it's powered up by stuff over here in this panel, but once it's powered on, it's called the PNMG and the RBN. That's it. They're both, the RBN runs off a specific beacon numbers. It's sort of like a VOR, if you know what a VOR is. If you don't know what a VOR is, it points towards a station and gives you a distance on the distance measuring equipment display here. So if we turn it on and we say we want to go to the specific aerodrome, which the aerodromes are numbered, they're fixed. if you want to go to airdrome number 1, you would dial in 1 on both of these, and you'd hear a Morse code indicator telling you where it is, and it would be a number here. Obviously, these would only work if you're within the nav-aid's range. So if you don't not in the range of nav-aid, they won't work, and you'll need to either climb higher or you need to get closer. One of two things. And over here is your flaps. So you have combat, takeoff, combat, and off, neutral, and you've got the engine start switch here, the ground start, air start, and the start switch. But that's all nav stuff over there. So I mean, there's at least some sort of ergonomic layout. These are your gear lights and your flap lights. I believe that is actually more or less it. So yeah, I mean, I guess I could go briefly. Let's put my laptop away into the. I think it's just put here. I'm not sure what this one here is here. I think that might be a G. I know there is a G meter and there's an accelerator. I think this might be these. I might be getting these two mixed up, but again, never used them. This wouldn't surprise me if it's a G meter. I think yeah, it's negative 4 Gs, positive 10 Gs. If someone is good with flight energy moving graphs, they could probably tell you how many Gs is optimal at what altitude during what speed. You'd need someone to tell you that, or the full flight manual, and I do mean the ones with all the energy maneuver graphs, which I don't have access to. It's in Russian probably. There may not even be an English version, but you would find that there. But I reiterate that in a dogfight, you really want to be in that yellow zone or just below the yellow zone. You really want to be in this zone. You don't want to be in the red. And if you're doing below 10, you're just listing lazily to one side, which is no good to anybody. And keep an eye out on these two. So when you're in a dogfight, you really want to be checking this. You'll make sure you're doing good here. Make sure these are okay, and check your speed. If speed is high. That's the nuclear arm switch, which is the one that you drop the bomb. Yeah, I've never really used it because the nukes don't look very good and not particularly practical. But I think that covers everything, and obviously you got the ground crew with the ram and refuel. Oops, there we go. Got the different weapons. Let's clear everything out. Let's empty everything out. You got your air missiles, R60s, R60Ms. Obviously, the M's are better than the R60s. These are the first generation. The R60 is the first generation heat-seeking missile, reverse engineered from the first Sidewinder, or the first GAR-8, which is the Sidewinder's predecessor. This is awful. Never use these. These are just really awful. To put it this way, this thing will lock onto the sun. If you point at the sun, it will probably lock onto it. You want the R60Ms. You got the R3s and the R5s. And over here you got the bombs. The bombs on the inside. The fabs, I believe. Fabs, if I remember correctly, yeah, fabs are just iron bombs. RBKs are cluster bombs. I can't remember what betas are, but the BL is a nuke. BL is the nuclear bomb. Actually, I don't think the BL is a nuclear bomb. I've really never used it. This is all the nuclear bombs. The RN and the RN-24 and the RN-28. They're both nuclear bombs. The difference is the size of the payload. And there's the your ECM pod with the chaff and flare, and a 7 here is your smoke you can put on, and over on hardpoint 6, which is just behind the wing, is your rocket assisted takeoff. That's the chaff flare, and the SPRNA, which is the rocket assisted takeoff. Now the rocket assisted takeoff switches are here. This gives it power when this one activates it. I've never used them. None of the airfields in this map are that small, but it's there if you want it. So anyways, that is a brief overlook. I do mean brief of the systems on board the MiG-21. I will go over probably the radar at some point in detail, probably just prior to the a BVR, a Beyond Visual Range engagement video, and I will probably remake that dogfight video I had because that was just way too long. So hope you guys find this useful. If you guys have any more questions, ask them below, or if you guys want to see anything specific, let me know. So yeah, that's it. Until next time, guys. See you guys.